Hello all, myself Vedangi and I am a legal intern at Lexis & Company. So guys, my another topic for today's discussion is the concept of the quasi-contract. So let's begin. As there are certain obligations specified in the Indian Contract Act that are not actually contracts because they miss out one or more essential elements of being a contract, but still they are enforceable in the court of law. Such obligations are called quasi-contractual obligations, and each of them have been talked separately under section 68 to 72 of the chapter 5 of the Indian Contract Act 1872. Now let's discuss the background of this concept. So it is first important to note that a contract, before it becomes a contract, it needs to be an agreement, and therefore when there is no agreement, there is no contract. And yet there are some obligations that do not have their origin in an agreement, and the obligation not to harm another person or his property, for example the judgments or the orders of the court, quasi-contractual obligations, etc. These obligations are not contracts by definition, but they are enforceable in the court of law. Now let's discuss the principle of the unjust enrichment. So the quasi-contracts are based on the principle of nemo debet locuplatory ex aliena juctura, which means no man should grow rich out of another person's loss. Therefore, liability in the case of a quasi-contractual obligation is based on the principle of unjust enrichment, and it essentially means that no man should get unjustly enriched at the cost of another person's loss. That means no person should gain anything unjustly when his gaining such a thing may mean a loss to the another person. Now let's discuss the features of the quasi-contract. So the first feature is that their origin does not lie in the offer and the acceptance, that is in an agreement between the parties, and second is they are rather based on the justice, equity and good conscience, and on the principle of the natural justice. Now let's discuss in brief section 68 to section 72 of the chapter 5. So section 68 provides for the claim for necessaries supplied to persons incapable of contracting or on his account. So if the necessaries for a person who is capable of contracting, let's say for example a minor or someone who is mentally disabled, or of the dependents of such a person are taken care of by someone, then he has the right to be reimbursed from the property of such incapable person. And although the term necessaries has not been specifically defined in this act, so it is impliedly clear that it means the necessaries to sustain life, like the basic things having food, clothing, education, shelter, etc. And these are the things without which a person cannot reasonably exist. In simple terms, we can say that if a person A supplies another person B who is capable of entering into a contract, or his family or anybody else who is dependent upon him, with necessaries for life, then he is entitled to take his due return from the property of person B, and he is entitled only to such a reasonable amount as the value of the goods or services he may be supplied for. Now talking about section 69, so it says that reimbursement of person paying money due by another in payment of which he is interested. So if a person A pays something to person B's place that which person B is himself bound by law to pay, then A will be reimbursed by B, and it should be noted that the person A should be interested in this payment. It is a case of implied indemnity. Now talking about section 70, so it says the obligation of the person who is enjoying the benefit of a non-gratuitous act. So when a person lawfully does something for another person, for example delivers a good or service without intending to do so gratuitously, and the other person enjoys the benefit of the delivery of that good or service, then the latter is bound to pay back to the former. For example, giving someone a gift is a gratuitous act, and the example we can say that a shoe shiner, he polishes people's shoes, or we can say a coolie who picks up others' goods, they are also covered under section 70. So such acts or services are not done gratuitously, and therefore a liability to pay back arises on the part of the person on the receiving end. Now talking about section 71, so it discusses the responsibility of the finder of the goods. So a person who finds the goods that belong to another person shall be treated as a bailee, and a bailee is essentially a safekeeper of the goods who is supposed to return the goods to the actual owner or dispose them in the manner in which the actual owner may want them to. The bailee has certain rights and duties that a custodian of the goods have. So let's discuss the duty and the right of the finder of the goods. So the duties of the finder of the goods are: the finder has a duty to take the reasonable care. He or she has a duty not to use the goods for his or her personal purposes. He or she has a duty not to mix the found goods with his or her own goods, and he or she has a duty to make reasonable efforts to find the actual owner of the goods. Now, talking about the rights of the finder of the goods, so first right is the right to lien, the right to retain the goods found until he receives compensation for all the expenses suffered in finding the owner. Second right is right to sue, that is, if the owner had announced a reward for whoever finds the good, the finder has the right to sue the owner for such reward or retain the goods until he is compensated. And the third right is right to sell, that is, the finder of the goods has the right to sell the goods in certain specific circumstances. For example, if the owner could not even find the goods after reasonable efforts, if the owner is found but refuses to pay the compensation of the finder, if the goods are in immediate danger of perishing if not used, and if the lawful charges of the finder amounts to 2/3 of the value of the goods. Now, talking about the last section, that is section 72. So it provides the liability of the person to whom money is paid or thing delivered by mistake or coercion. So if something is delivered to a person by mistake or under coercion, then he is liable to pay back. For example, if there are two persons and they share a flat and contribute in half for the rent of the flat to be paid, so one of them, without knowing that the other one has already paid due rent to the landlord in whole, and he pays again to the landlord, so the landlord in this case is liable to give that money back delivered to him by mistake. And therefore the term mistake here can mean both the mistake of the fact as well as the mistake of the law. And this section also uses the term coercion. So we can say, let's say for an example, a railway company refuses to deliver the goods to a certain consignee except upon the payment of certain illegal sum of money. So the consignee pays the sum to obtain his goods, and the company is liable to return the sum of money that is illegally charged. So what we can conclude from this entire concept is that a contract has certain elements like the offer and the acceptance that give rise to an agreement, and the agreement, if it is legally enforceable, it becomes a contract. That is, it can be taken care of in the court of law in case it is not performed by either of the parties who are involved. Yet there are certain situations where even in the absence of an agreement, one or the other party is obliged to perform something, and such obligations are called quasi-contractual obligations, and they are covered under Chapter 5 of the Indian Contract Act 1872. So guys, that's all about my discussion on this particular topic. I hope you all liked my video. If you guys have any doubt with regard to this video or to the previous one, then you can comment in the comment section. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel Lex Click. We will meet in the next video. Till then, bye.